You're listening to The Secret Society of Western Big Game Hunting with Dan Adler.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to The Secret Society of Western Big Game Hunting. Dan Adler here. We talk a little bit of hunting, we talk a lot about life, we talk a little bit of everything. Today I have a guest who's become a personal friend and mentor. His life has been nothing short of a wild ride. He ran to Branson at 17 years old, spent over a decade touring the world with Kenny Chesney as a fiddle player. He co-founded a country band, The Farm, and now is award-winning host of Nick's Wild Ride. Nick Hoffman, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing today?
Thanks, man. That's a way overdone, way too gracious of an intro. When I hear things like that listed off, it makes me uncomfortable. I immediately want to be like, I'm sorry, you're talking about somebody else. I think I don't like that.
I know, I love that. I've seen you do that. You've always been humble, and the things you've accomplished in conservation in your own life are really inspirational, a lot of fun. And I'm excited to have you here today inside my speakeasy here in Prescott, Arizona, to kind of talk about a little bit of hunting, a little bit about life. Our audience is huge on Western big game hunting, international hunting, something you know a lot about. You've been part of the Zero Outfitter Fees and Diamond Outfitters family for a long time, especially dating back to Borderland Adventures with Matt Woodward, over a decade. And so we've got to see a lot of different sides of you. We've got to share in your success and watch you grow in your business and in your life. We're super proud to have you on the show today. I want to talk a little bit about some leaps of faith. You know, we have a lot of commonalities. In fact, I'm already going off script a little bit for our audience. I've known Nick for over a decade. I've followed him for over a decade. We've been friends for probably the last 5 or 6 years, give or take. And one of the things that happened to me, you guys all know, I always joke, my home is Prescott, Arizona, but my other home is Seat 2F on American Airlines. Nick travels more than I do, believe it or not. And so one of the things I've always found really interesting about the travel and the journey and everything that we're doing together, there's a big mindset piece that goes with that. And we even talked off air about the balance from being at home versus being away, especially with children. And it's really going fast. So we both had big leaps of faith. For me, it was leaving the military, waking up one day and saying, you know, I thought I was going to do this military thing for like 20 or 30 years. And then I was like, you know what? I went on this guided hunt. It wasn't all it's cracked up to be. I like hunting, and I'm going to take this big leap of faith. I'm going to follow. You went from touring stages, stadiums of 60,000 people, to go take up this hunting. And at the same time, you don't get enough credit for it. Also, the conservation. I've talked at length on the pod about why I made that shift. I'd love our audience to hear a little bit about the inside of your brain and where you went. As much fun as this is, as much success as I'm having touring the world and seeing these big stadiums and adoring fans, to shift gears and say, I'm ready to hang that identity up and take on the hunting and conservation movement. I'd love to hear about what that mindset shift was like for you and what those days, weeks, or years of self-talk and conversations you're having to do such a jump.
Wow, I never really thought about it in those terms until you kind of mentioned it like that. That it really is a huge shift from the music to the hunting side of things, and I think there's a two-part answer to that. That the first part of it is that I think without realizing it, I'm confident enough in my as a person, and I guess maybe in ability or whatever, or maybe I'm stupid enough. I'm not sure. It's one of the two, or maybe it's a combination of a formula of being, this much stupid plus this much confidence equals this much leaps of faith. I'm not sure exactly what the formula is, but I ran away from home when I was 16, 17 years old. You mentioned it at the beginning. Um, and there's negative and there's positive inspiration that happens in all of our lives, right? Um, and everybody thinks about inspiration as super positive, something positive that happens. In my case, it started uh, when I was about 17 years old. I was playing in a band, little bluegrass band full of teenagers that I had. And I was missing school every once in a while with the blessing of my parents. My parents were like, if you get your homework and you keep your grades up, you can miss school every once in a while. So I had this band and we were running a little business. We were getting fairly successful and we were playing bluegrass, like I said. And I would miss like Fridays every once in a while. Well, one day I got called into the principal's office, and this guy's name was Dr. Dean Suter. And Dr. Dean Suter called me into the principal's office. He said, Nick, you've missed too many days aggregate. You're going to you're gonna lose credit for your junior year in high school, and you're gonna have to repeat your junior year of high school.
Gosh.
And I was like a straight A student. And I said to him, I said, I'm missing these classes because, and I'm being responsible and getting my homework done because this is what I'm going to do for a living. I'm going to play music someday. And I am honing my craft and learning my business because as soon as I'm out of high school, I'm going to Nashville or Branson or somewhere like that. And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, Nick, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. He actually said, the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. You will never amount to anything as a musician. You
Wow.
should give up on that dream right now. That's a quote
Wow.
from an educator, from somebody who's
Right.
supposed to be inspirational. And I felt cornered. I felt like uh like I like my world was crumbling around me because I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I was just spinning my wheels in high school to do it, right? And so I laid in bed that night and and there's more to that story, but to paraphrase it, I laid in bed that night and I just felt like I couldn't imagine. It seemed when you're 16 or 17, it feels like the end of the absolute world, right? It's not
Of
the end of the
course.
world, but it feels like it. I had a friend drop me off at the Greyhound station, and that next morning, and unbeknownst to my parents, I left for Branson, Missouri, where I wanted to start my career, and my parents didn't know where I was. God, my poor mother. Looking back, I wouldn't do it like I did it, but I'd still do it. So the question is about leaps, right? That was a leap of faith that I didn't even at the time. I was so naive. I had $60 in cash in my pocket and and was dumb enough to think that was enough. My grandpa had given me his credit card to get some gas in his car. I had his credit card, and I actually swiped his credit card for the bus ticket, and
Wow.
I paid him back, and then I put that credit card in the mail and sent it home to him. And and my point is that that was an uneducated leap of faith. Okay. So that's one kind of leap of faith. The other one, and that was based on negative inspiration. The other kinds, like going from music into hunting, those are educated leaps of faith. They're different, right? Because educated leaps of faith are the kind that you want to take. You want to jump off a cliff knowing that there's water down there, not rocks, and you've done that research. You know what I mean? You're like, I think
Absolutely.
if I land down there, I might get bruised up a little bit, but I'm gonna be okay. I have a parachute, whatever your metaphor is, right? So for me, having a educated leap of faith is the key to any success, right? And it's still a blind leap of faith that you don't know what the outcome's going to be when you do it. But man, having the cards stacked in your favor is pretty good. So when it came to the hunting side of things, and I had always been a hunter that liked to travel, and it wasn't that big of a stretch for me when this opportunity. It's a long story how the opportunity for the TV show came up. I don't want to bore you with it now because I've already answered your question for too long. But the the when I decided to leave the music, my band had broken up. So I left. First off, I left Kenny Chesney's band to start my own band, and then we got a record deal and had two songs on the radio. We were doing really well. Well, the band broke up, and I knew that I'd have at least a year of off time. And this TV show idea came up, and we decided to go with it. The reason it was an educated leap is because very simply put, to me, it's entertainment.
Hmm.
And I've spent my entire life being an entertainer and having cameras follow me around doing what I'm going to do anyway, which is go hunting somewhere, explore local history, food, and culture, go to the local museum, find the local dive bar, have the local beer, have the local burger, talk to the local craftsman. That's what I'm going to do anyway.
Yeah.
So it's a very authentic stretch for me. I mean, it's not a stretch, it's a very authentic leap for me to go from the stage to the television and do something that's authentic. A lot of people see it as a huge stretch because it's not music. Music and hunting, how are they related? Well, in my case, they're related because it's entertainment.
Yeah.
And that's the gist of it. And I tell that whole story. I know that's a long answer, but I tell that whole story because hopefully there's somebody out there right now that's listening that goes, I just needed that push off the cliff. I've already been thinking about making this leap. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I'm here to tell you, if you think you can do it, you probably can. Like
Yeah.
if whatever it is that's holding you back is probably not the right reason to not take that leap. Because on your deathbed someday, you're gonna look back and go, man, I really should have taken that leap. I shouldn't have worried so much about that extra $1,000 in the checking account, or this or that, or whatever the reasons are. Usually resourceful people can overcome almost anything, and you're an entrepreneur, as well. I mean, so anyway, I'm sorry for the long answer, but I feel like that's my story in a nutshell, is
Yeah.
trying to take educated leaps, and building on the confidence that I got from having the positive reinforcement of taking one big leap and be like, oh, this actually worked out. Don't get me wrong, there were a lot of pitfalls and it sucked at times. I slept on
Yep.
park benches and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I played for
Sure.
tips, and there's at every turn and every stage of my career, there's been shitty parts of it. But
Yeah.
man, what a blessing to have the 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 ability to be able to say, I'm going to try that. And if it fails, it'll be okay, you know?
Yeah. We'll figure it
So
out.
sorry for the long answer, but
Great
yeah,
answer.
yeah,
Uh, your story of your teacher saying you'll never amount to anything. When I left the Air Force in 2005, I was a captain, so I was on officer's pay, flight pay, hazardous duty pay, go down the list. So 2005 as an O3 in the Air Force, that was about $80,000 in 2005 dollars. So I think
sure.
inflation adjusted, that's maybe 110, $115,000 for
Making a
listeners
good
in
living.
2026.
Yeah,
And I gave that up to go to zero to become an entrepreneur and start Diamond Outfitters and later Zero Outfitter fees. And my point to this is you had a teacher, somebody who's influential in your life, mattered to you, what they thought of you. Your identity was somewhat in what they had to say about you.
yep,
My mother, who I love dearly, still to this day, one of my greatest inspirations as an entrepreneur. I'm glad she's still on the planet. When I told her I was thinking of leaving the Air Force to start a guide business, she said, "That's amazing. And what are you going to do to make money?"
yeah.
Same as you being told you'll never mount to anything. I was told never mount to anything, but I was told this is not a path where you can be profitable. This is not a
That's
path
right.
where you can be successful. This is a path where you need to stay for 20 or 30 years and get that pension. So,
I can
on this
promise you,
journey
had
that,
people told me that about the television show too.
yeah.
Yeah,
So on that journey, I think I've dealt with this just even talking to some of my junior guides in the company, and I'd like to talk a little bit about this. You talked about the park benches. When we were in Nashville this year for SCI, my wife and I took a friend of ours to a restaurant, and I said, "You're going to like this place. We were here last year. We had this great server." And the server, after serving us, he went on stage. Like, this is actually a restaurant where not only do they work here, but then they go on stage and they sing. And I'm explaining this.
yeah,
And Nick, I'm not joking. Up comes our server a year later, and it's the same guy. And here he is. He's going to serve us again and go on stage. In my mind, I was sure that he had already hit it big and he's already moved
sure.
on. He wouldn't be in this restaurant anymore. And you talked about sleeping on park benches. You know, People see you and I, public figures,
Mm-hmm.
and they think it's always been rainbows and butterflies. You've slept
Mm.
on park benches. I gave up $110,000 to go to zero and make my wife the sole breadwinner in our family. The journey, there's some bruises and some scars on the way to success. And I think, to what you're saying, that's a lot of why people don't take action, don't move forward. I had a conversation this morning. Our parallels in life are unbelievable. I had a conversation this morning about a guy who drew debatably a once in a lifetime archery elk hunt. Maybe he can draw it again, but let's just pretend it's close to once in a lifetime.
Sure.
And he said, "Dan, the paperwork your wife sent me says an option to add as much as 3 to 7 more days to the hunt. Should I do it?" And I said, "Well, do you want me to answer? I can't answer that financially for you. Only you can decide that. But I can tell you what my other clients have told me. Because for me, it's not about money. It's about the journey. Or is this hunt going to bring you what you want?" And he
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, hit me." And I said, "On your deathbed, God willing, 50, 60 years from now, are you going to be there in the last moment as the light's coming towards you and go, 'I wish I hadn't spent 3 or 7 more days on the Elk Mountain'?"
Yep.
He said, "Absolutely not." I said, "Then write the check.
Yeah.
We don't know when you're going to draw this tag again. Do you want to rush back to the office? Do you want to rush back to screen time?" So there is a lot of that. Now, in your journey, if I remember conversation with you, actually, I have to throw something out. Remember a minute ago, I said I kind of lost my thought. One of the things I wanted to share with you, because I have known you for so long, is I had a long flight. I don't remember where I was going, but I watched like 4 or 5 back to back episode of Nick's Wild Ride. Okay, on YouTube, guys, make sure you're following in there. And I landed like I'm getting goosebumps. I always say goosebumps don't lie. And I had to call you. And it was one of the rare times in the last half a dozen or so years we've been friends where normally I'm like, call me when you can, call me when you can. But this was more like, hey, this is a little bit more urgent, less leisurely. And it was because I want to tell you, and I wrote it down. I was like, I just want to share with you as much as I already thought you and I had in common. After watching like 5 or 6 episodes of Nick's Wild Ride, I literally just had to tell you. And I think it was almost awkward for me or awkward for you, or maybe it wasn't. Like it just flowed. But I said, hey, dude, I just got to tell you. And I don't know if you know what I'm building up to, but I was like, I just have to tell you something. I'm acquaintances with a lot of people. I have a very small circle of friends purposefully, but I know a lot of people and you know a lot of people. But I got to tell you, Nick Hoffman, you get me. And I know that just by watching 4 or 5 back to back episodes of your show on an airplane, that even though we've been friends for all these years, seeing you, in my eyeballs, in my ears for whatever that 3 hour period was, between the way you seek adventure travel, not just the hunt, not just killing something, the food, the culture, the music, the energy, the vibe, the gratitude of just being able to be in such a beautiful place. I feel like at that time I knew we were going to be a lot closer than just friends. I was like, this guy, he gets me, he understands me. And that's exactly the same type of energy I was bringing, hopefully, to my environment. And on that note, I think you and I have another thing in common that we haven't talked about. I did not grow up in a hunting family, and I don't
Oh
believe
yeah.
you did either. Who was your mentor? Who brought you into the hunting? Tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, I mean that's a common thing that comes up that when I if I go and I speak at a banquet or whatever, that people are really surprised about because nowadays, especially my identity is much circle, is especially to there's a whole hunting audience that doesn't even know that I'm a musician, which is kind of shameful on my part, but like so they just know me as this international hunter who's running around and you know killing Marco Polos and stuff, right? Like so they know me as that. They just assume that came from yeah, I've been hunting since I was 5 like them. It's the opposite of that. I didn't grow up on a hunting family, but I did grow up on a farm and I did grow up in the country and my from my some of my earliest favorite memories are going to the shooting range with my grandfather and my dad. We grew up learning to shoot. We grew up enjoying shooting, trap shooting, and target shooting, and all sorts of stuff. It wasn't that we were anti-hunting; just nobody in my family hunted. My dad. The story goes that my dad actually, I have a gun downstairs. My dad tried deer hunting once when he was about 18 with some guys that he worked with, and they went up to northern Minnesota, where I'm from Minnesota. Went up to northern Minnesota for the weekend, and he hated it. He said some drunk farmer tried to shoot at him
Oh my
and
gosh.
he didn't like it. And he had a 30-30 Winchester lever action that was sitting on the front of an RV. And that when they brought the RV down off the blocks, they didn't know it was there and they drove over it and busted the stock and bent the barrel. And I have that gun downstairs. I'm going to put it up on the wall in my office at some point. But so nobody in they weren't against it is the point. They just didn't grow up in a hunting family. So fast forward to me growing up on this in this beautiful, I mean, hunting Shangri-La. I mean, literally we have farm fields, woods, cornfields. So I've got pheasants. We didn't have turkeys at the time. There are turkeys there now. Pheasants. We had some ducks because we had a lake right there. We had deer, obviously. We had everything you could want as a Minnesotan kid, and I just grew up like going through the woods every day and looking for tracks and trying to. One day I remember I snuck up on a doe that was bedded and almost touched her. Like I got so close to her. It took me like an hour and a half to get close to her, and she was sleeping, and I almost touched her. Like I didn't realize at the time that that was hunting.
Yeah.
Like I have it. Some people are wired to be hunters and some people are wired to be gatherers, and I was just always wired to be a hunter even though nobody else in my family was. I would walk through the ditches by my house. I would just go for a walk with my dog, who was just a family golden retriever, and we would flush pheasants. I didn't have a
Hmm.
gun. I just wanted to find the pheasants. So anyway, it was a neighbor. Jim Zawistowski was his name, that took me deer hunting for the first time, and another guy that was the neighbor of my grandparents up north. His name was Lon Hansen. His son Kevin and I are the same age, and they took me on my first duck hunt. They took me on a duck hunt. That was the first duck hunt. And then our neighbor, the nearest neighbor to our farm, was this guy Jim Zawasowski, and he took me on my first deer hunt. And they both happened in the same year. I was 12 or 13 years old and had just gotten my hunter safety certificate with a buddy, and it changed my life. Right? Like my life is measured in before and after that. I didn't really get super serious about big game hunting until I was in my 20s, my early
Okay.
20s. Um, but man, I mean, without those guys, I talk a lot about mentorship now because to me, what they both did was really special. They didn't just take me on my first hunt and then leave me on, to figure it out. They followed up with me for years. Hey, are you going hunting this year? Got any questions? And I'd be like, yeah, hey, what kind of shotgun should I buy? You know what I mean? Because I really don't know.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I'm going to buy a deer hunting rifle, or I want to get a bow. Like these guys helped me all the way through especially Lon. I mean, helped me all the way into my 20s. That's mentorship. A mentor isn't somebody who takes you hunting once and then just see you later. That's a
Yeah.
helper. Like that's somebody who helps you, or an inspiration. That's an inspiration. A mentor is somebody who has a vested interest in helping you for a long period of time. That's a real mentor. And, I always talk about that to people. Like, I challenge you, if you've got somebody, you can't be a mentor to everybody, a true mentor to everybody, but everybody can be a mentor to somebody.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and so, I've had great mentors in my life, and later on in my hunting career, there were other guys that are and still are mentors. True people that still check in with me, or that I can call and be like, "Hey, I'm thinking about this." And it's not just hunting; it's business, it's everything, right? Like, and I'm so lucky that I've had great mentors throughout my career. I mean, incredible ones. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't grow up in a hunting family, but here I am, and it's
Yeah.
it's because I have it in me, right? Like innately, like I wanted to do it. Man, that's the spark. But there were a couple of people who threw logs on the fire and gasoline
Yep. Yep.
and kept it coming until I was able to put gasoline and logs on my own, you
When
know?
did you, um, I also would say that because I always thought I would be a career 20, 30-year Air Force officer, I never thought I would get as serious about big game. And here we are 20 years later, one of the top veteran outfits in the world. Didn't set out to do that. And I'm going to guess, I'm picturing you out there in the field flushing quail with the dog, but not even a gun at 12, 13 years old. And at another area where I feel like our are similar, because that was about the age I got introduced to it, as I talk about in my book with the mountain nose.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm picturing you out there in the field and the dogs are flushing, you've got no gun and you're pretending. That 12-year-old boy didn't know within the next 20 years you were going to hunt all six continents.
Oh, hell no. No, under
When
no
did you start
circumstances.
when did you start to think or expect for yourself that not only am I going to do this, but I'm going to do it big and I'm going to fall so in love with the desire to see the world through the hunting lens. And again, I know you saw the world
Yeah.
first probably through the music lens. So did doing some of the tours with Chesney make you think I'm coming back to this place next time, but to hunt like when did you really start to think, oh, I'm going to do this big. I'm going to hunt all the continents. I'm going to do all the
Yeah.
things.
That's a really interesting question that I haven't thought about too much about, because it's fun to think about, because I didn't start out with the huge international side of things in mind. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm not a kid of means. I'm not. We didn't. My parents, we were just a regular middle class, you know, like maybe even lower middle class family. Like, my dad is a blue collar guy. My mom was a blue collar woman. Like, it wasn't. We certainly. I just wanted to someday kill one big deer,
Okay.
like a really like that was my, if I had a hunting goal, 25 years ago, it would have been just one day I want to kill a booner whitetail. Like that's it. And that was unachievable, by the way. That seemed like something that was so pie in the sky, but the inspiration definitely came a little bit early for the idea of maybe not only more big game in the North America, but international in that that kid who always wanted to hunt would spend part of his allowance or the money I'd make playing fiddle on hunting. I'd send away for hunting videos, and I'd go to Barnes and Noble and get Field and Stream magazine, right? Or, wherever I could get it. And I would read Field and Stream, and I
Yep.
would send away for hunting videos. And even though and this is a kid who isn't hunting, but I loved reading about it. I loved reading the stories, I loved reading. I remember I read Treks Across Africa, the Teddy Roosevelt book, like when I was 13, 14 years old. Like I just wanted to consume it. So anyway, the Field and Stream stuff and some of those hunting videos were my first entrance into, like, I remember the two white sheep. Like, to me, that was always the doll sheep and the Marco Polo. Like, if I'd read articles about those, if there was a white sheep on the front of a magazine, I was going to buy it,
Wow.
because the mountain stuff was this, it's the equivalent of like growing up in my era and thinking that someday you might get to date Pamela Anderson, right?
Love it.
Like that. There's no way I'm ever gonna end up with Pamela Anderson. A sheep hunt to me was that same level of
Okay.
thing. Sheep hunting was Pamela Anderson to me. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
just never in a million years would I be able to afford it, or was it in my cards? Okay. I
Yeah.
just wanted to deer hunt once. So when I started the Nick's Wild Ride show, um, even at the beginning of that, like the pilot episode is a turkey hunt in Louisiana. I go down there and I make hot sauce, and I have Cajun food, and I crawfish and do all the local stuff. The first season had almost no international anything in it. A, because we couldn't afford it, and B, because it wasn't necessarily on my radar as much. But after the success of the first season, suddenly I had opportunities to go to Africa, go to Spain, go to some of these what I would now consider to be starter hunts. You know what I mean, for international hunting, and so that those opportunities opened up, and my life is completely changed by that. Early on, one of the reasons I got into the hunting industry was because of Lee and Tiffany Lukoski. They had a television show called Getting Close, which is now they have The Crush, right? But in the first couple of seasons of their show,
Yep.
I met them through the music industry, and they invited me on some hunts to be a guest on their show. My first international hunt was with them to go on a black bear hunt way up in the Arctic Circle, almost in the Arctic Circle in Alberta, northern Alberta, almost Northwest Territories kind of area. And it was the first time I'd ever been truly off the grid to hunt, and I fell in love with it. The next year, they took me up to Churchill, Manitoba, also like way up there, almost in the north, almost in Nunavut, for a caribou hunt. Polar bears were everywhere, and that hunt changed my life because it was the first time that I'd ever had a like a true international passport needed type of thing. It was totally exotic, bush plains, the whole 9 yards. And I was like, how do I get more of this in my life? You know what I mean? I mean, it
Yes.
changed me. And so then when I started the TV show, obviously I had that in my mind, but I didn't think we'd ever have the budget for it. And luckily we've had enough success that I do have a little bit more budget in to go and do some of those things. And since then, 11 seasons, I've been on 150 plus big game hunts all over the world. So it's crazy to me that it's still, every time I'm on one of those hunts, or every time that I get the chance to even just get on a plane and go somewhere, I have to pinch myself and be like, is this really my life? Am I really getting to do this? Like, the gratitude, you mentioned gratitude earlier, the amount of gratitude I feel that people watch this and give me the opportunity to live my wildest dreams. I mean, dude, I get to play music and go hunting for a living. Are you kidding me? Like,
Right.
this isn't what I expected from my life at all, and there isn't a day that goes by that I take it for granted. Not one. If I had a dime for every time that somebody weighs in on Instagram and says, "Oh, it must be nice," or if I had, an opportunity to go hunt there, yeah, I'd be able to kill that thing too, or da 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 da. Yeah, the answer is you can do that. First off, and second, it didn't come without a lot of hard work,
Yeah.
but regardless of how much hard work or there's absolutely a level of just how the hell did I get here? You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? So anyway, I again another rambling answer, but you tapped into something that I'm passionate about, which is I feel just blessed. And I
Yeah.
know
I
that's
love the gratitude.
it's such a cliched thing to say. I feel blessed about to have this, or I feel gratitude. Those are cliche terms nowadays. But I gotta be honest. If you look up the definition of those things in the dictionary, that's what I feel.
Yeah.
You know what I
No,
mean?
I think the gratitude makes so much sense. I mean, and I think, people may say this is pie in the sky listening to it, but I do believe the more you give, the more you get. I do believe the more gratitude you have, the more your heart's open to those things. And the whole idea of it must be nice, like that's a big trigger word for me too, because anytime I hear somebody say that must be nice, they have a limiting belief in their own brain that that's not something
That's
they
right.
can achieve. And you and I, you know, prove that basically, anybody can do if they put their mind to it. They want it bad enough. We live in the greatest, freest country in the world. There's nothing something we can't do if we really want it bad enough. And that stick to itiveness is the term I've made up to kind of talk about that a little bit. I
Well,
think
I talk
another
about that all the time. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I talk
Go
about that
ahead.
all the time where it doesn't have to be you don't have to be Dan, you don't have to be Nick, you don't have to be Cam Haynes. Like you could just do like I said when I started the TV show or even when I first put out my first record years ago or whatever. Your bar doesn't have to be I have to go hunt Marco Polos in Tajikistan.
Yeah.
I have to go hunt Markhors that cost $200,000. That no, the bar can be so much lower and still be so gratifying. There are a bazillion, not a bazillion. To start with, there are a handful of international badass hunts, and I'm talking about as hard as anything or as easy as you want. You pick your own adventure. International, incredible animals that you're going to be proud of for the rest of your life. That anybody I will challenge and say anyone can save for and do at least once in their life.
Amen.
Like, starting with a representative species of ibex in Spain. That is something that anybody can save their money and do. Or
Yeah.
pay attention to SCI auctions and get one dirt cheap. Like,
Right.
if you really want to do it, it is possible. Anybody can go on a big can afford to even if you have to save for 10 years to do it, anybody can go on a big Illinois Pike County whitetail hunt if they want to. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Anybody can go on a hunt with Diamond Outfitters in New Mexico if they want to. Those are within the grasp of anyone if you put your mind to it. No, I'm not sitting here saying that there aren't people listening that have no money and that seems unachievable, but, my parents took me to Disney World when I was 11 years old, saving quarters.
Yep.
It took them almost 10 years from the time we were little. They started saving quarters, and when we were 10 or 11, they had enough money saving quarters in a big, huge glass jar and took us to Disney World.
Yeah. Yep.
I
It's the
think
same
that it's the
it's
same
the same
mentality.
It is. And it's that same mentality from that 21-year-old West Virginia coal miner who came to me and said, how do I one day be able to afford an elk hunt in my life that created zero outfitter fees? Unbeknownst to him or I was like, we'll come up with a better way. And you're so right. Like if your brain is, it must be nice. If your brain is, that's great for Nick or Dan, but that'll never be me. Or, people watch Jim Shockey and oh gosh, that must blah, 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 blah. It's like, dude, you're starting off with the different mindset. Start off with, hey, I want to do something. I intend to do something. Here's the paths to doing that. And if you don't know what those paths are, get yourself to Nashville and come see the SCI show and come talk to us and come
That
visit with us because there is so much opportunity. And like you said, some of the auction hunts, there's a lot of ways to backdoor into some of these hunts for very inexpensive. I
Absolutely. And man, I got to be honest, like that's how some of these things started with me. Like I said, when I started the show, I thought I'd really like to do one or two international hunts a year, but for me they were like going to be the kind of things that were at the price level that I had already experienced, like a bear hunt in
Yeah.
in Alberta. Those are achievable, fairly low-hanging fruit money-wise kinds of hunts. I mean, and then I went to my first SCI convention years ago and met a couple people that are like, "No, did you know that you could do you might not kill a huge one, but you can go get the experience to do an archery Canada moose
Yeah.
in the middle of Alberta for 5, 6 grand,
Right.
right? And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Because I can save $5,000 to $6,000 in a couple of years, extra money.
Absolutely.
I could do that if I work hard enough and do it. And so I did. That's how I looked at it. Then of course, like I said, then we had some success with the TV show, and I was able to have some more opportunities open up to me that I never would have expected would have happened. You know,
Yeah.
but a mountain hunter that I consider myself a mountain hunter now. But
Right.
when I started off, um, in my hunting career, if you will, I saw myself as a guy who maybe would get to do that every once in a while. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like I
Yeah.
saw it as I didn't see myself as a guy who was going to be hunting mountains every year, several times a year. So, and it starts off too, like you and I have talked about this before. When I started the Next Wild Ride thing, I whiteboarded everything and like had this, what's the mission statement? Who am I?
Yep.
What do I want
Yep.
to say in this show? And in big letters across the type of the whiteboard, it says, I am not an expert.
Yeah.
And that's because there are lots of experts out there. You know what I mean? And I look up to them, and I read their articles and I watch their shows and stuff. And I felt I had a little bit of, I wouldn't say that I had imposter syndrome because I wasn't going to try and be an expert. That was the whole thing. It's like, how do I avoid having imposter syndrome? Well, the way
Yeah.
I did that is just by, who am I and what's authentic to me? Well, what's authentic to me is doing what I'm doing anyway. If I go
Yes.
somewhere to hunt, I'm going to explore the local history and food and culture of the place I go. I loved Anthony Bourdain,
Yeah.
and that was the formula, the Anthony Bourdain style hunting show. There wasn't anything like it, and at the time, and it fit a niche, and and it's afforded me some of the greatest joys of my life.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Beautifully said. I think when I think about our backgrounds, there is a giant, not stereotype, but there's a giant perception of what that decade plus must have been like behind the scenes. If I were to be like, what Nick's life must have been like, a decade plus touring with Kenny Chesney all around the world. And I'm sure thanks to movies like Top Gun and whatnot, there's a lot of people who think, well, what is Dan's time in the Air Force and the flying side must have been like? And you and I know there's some truth to that. You know, and there's a lot of Hollywood to that. However, I do want to ask, what are some life lessons that, despite all the worldliness, I'm going to use the word worldliness, despite all your worldliness that you got through traveling as a musician, what are lessons you've learned in a hunting camp around a campfire that the music industry could have never taught you or prepared you for that have been huge, valuable lessons to you as you raise a family or grow your hunting side of your business?
Oh, that's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind is reinforcing the authenticity thing. So you learn that in the music business, definitely, right? Like you you learn that authenticity really is key to 75% of the artists that have big success, right? Like they have something that's really authentic and really special. We can use Kenny Chesney for a great example. Like there's a great quote that he said in an article once that I have never forgotten. He said, "The day I quit trying to be George Strait and started being
Mm,
myself, was the day I started being successful." And I got to watch a lot of that happen when he started to embrace the kind of beachy side of what he was doing, and he started working out, and he started really, he found himself. He found who he
yeah.
was. His audience exploded because people gravitate towards authenticity. So I learned that in the music business, but it was reinforced in hunting camps because around fires, because you want to talk about an eclectic group of authentic people. Go to any hunting camp ever, it's a mishmash of characters, right, that are all coming from all walks of life, but we have this one commonality, right? But the people you remember the most, the people that you take the most away from, are truly authentic characters, right? Like
Yeah.
and they're unabashed about it. They don't even realize they're so authentic. They don't even realize they're being authentic. You know what I mean? So that's one thing for sure, is reinforcing authenticity, and how important it is to success. You got to find your lane and stick to it, whatever that is. My dad is a heating and air conditioning guy that is self-employed because he could have my dad's one of the smartest engineer minded people that I know, but he really liked just going to work on his own every day. He didn't want to have employees. He didn't want to work for anybody. He just wanted to go and do his thing every day. That level
Yeah.
of authenticity has given him a level of happiness that's really great. So anyway, I reinforced that in hunting camps. Another thing I learned in hunting camps, I think, you don't have to be an expert to be successful. And that means that you just have to be present, must be present to win, right?
Yeah.
You can't kill a big elk if you're not in elk camp. You can't kill a big elk if usually if you don't put the work in, you know? And I think that a lot of people, that must be present to win thing, and you don't have to be an expert. You can hire experts, right? You can get help. You and I were talking about it in your business a while back, that at some point, and I'm in the same boat, like I have to hire some help to help me do X, Y, and Z because I don't have enough time. I'm not I'm not going to pretend that I know everything about social media. I need help with that part of my business, right? Because I don't know it. Why would you pretend that you can that if you've only been on one elk hunt in your life that you're going to go off and do it on your own right off the bat? We all know tons of people. I have a couple of friends that have been to Colorado 6 times and never seen an elk.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
so I don't know. I digress again. What I've learned, another thing I've learned in hunting camps is that you don't have to be an expert to be successful.
Yeah.
You just need to put yourself in a position to win, and then you have to be present to win. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? I don't
Yeah.
know.
I love it.
I
There are
could
a
go
lot
on
of
and on. There's
people.
lots of other things too, I'm sure, but you know,
Yeah. There's a lot, it feels like we're living in a time where, I mean, despite our best efforts, I would say, guys like you and me, that people are more and more getting disconnected from nature, more connected to their screens, more
absolutely.
connected to their jobs. You have a massive platform on the hunting side, but you also have a massive platform in the music and entertainment side. And you get to interact with a lot of people who also don't hunt. What's the mindset you have? And I know you won't like the term, but I'm gonna give it to you anyways. When you step into the role of hunting ambassador, what's that like for you? What advice would you have for people who maybe are at their job, or I talk about it as my elevator speech to people who don't hunt. Um, how do we as a community do a better job of communicating the truth about conservation, ethical hunting, and what's kind of your elevator speech when you're put in those roles, and what would you want audiences to know? They're like, man, I'm stuck at this job where it feels like I'm the only conservative, I'm the only big game hunter, but I don't want that just to be the, oh, he must be that beer guzzling white
Yeah.
trash, shoot everything that moves guy. Like, how can you help those guys as an ambassador to the sport, ambassador to conservation? What's your elevator pitch, or how would you get those guys pumped up, ready to have a
That's a
meaningful conversation with lasting impact?
Yeah, another great question. The one of the things that's on that whiteboard that I talked about earlier when I first started kind of creating a mission statement for what I wanted to do with the television show. One of the other things on there is something that has become way more of a mantra to me than I expected this line to be. It's actually become the mantra of what I'm trying to do, is that hunting is about so much more than killing. Okay? So what does that mean to me? It's changed a little bit, but it's pretty simple. Hunting is about way more. The act of killing something is such an infinitesimal part of the actual sport or lifestyle or whatever you want to call it of hunting. Um, and the deeper you get, the more you realize that's true. It starts with, you know, just the sustainable harvest of meat. Like, that a lot of people don't hunt don't understand that we don't just go out there and kill something and let it lay. The other side of it for me is obviously the amount of conservation that that hunters and hunter dollars do is something that is oftentimes the number one thing you can do to tell people about to change hearts and minds. None of that was what I didn't start out to have a platform of any of those things. But with some success comes a little bit of responsibility too, and also I've just become really passionate about sharing that message. Hunting is about so much more than killing. We eat what we kill, and at least I think that for the most part, sustainable ethical hunting should involve that. It does, and then of course the side of the conservation side of things. I mean, when you can explain to someone with it, and it doesn't take a lot of bullet points to memorize. When you can explain to somebody that there are dozens, literally dozens of species that are not extinct because of hunters and hunter dollars.
Yeah.
That's a paradox, a oxymoron that people just can't, oftentimes can't get their heads around. But it's not hard. A couple of articles sent to someone to say, hey, when you get a chance, read this and let me know what you think. It's amazing how quickly you can, if somebody sits on the fence of whether or not they're for or against hunting, if one bad image, bloody image with a tongue hanging out, is all it takes to
Yep.
to turn them to the other side.
Yeah.
And statistically speaking, we know now through research that once they fall to that, even though they're not anti-hunting, they have a bad taste in their mouth about it. Once they fall to that side of the fence, getting them back is really, really hard. It's
Yeah.
also equally as easy to tip somebody towards the pro hunting side of the fence by explaining to them why we do it, what we do with it, and how we protect the wildlife itself. And those things aren't easy. They're not easy to totally change someone's mind, but it's very easy to get them thinking about it.
Yeah.
Very easy. You know what I mean? And I don't know if that answered your question or not, but that's how I feel about it. I think showcasing the fact that hunting is about so much more than killing in your own way, whatever that means to you. Again, authenticity. Nobody wants to hear you give a bullet pointed elevator speech, but they
Right.
do want to hear what it means to you and why you do it. And the truth is that most hunters aren't that Bubba Fat beer guzzling Bubba guy.
Right.
There's bad eggs in everything.
Correct.
Bad eggs in the military, bad eggs in the music business, bad eggs in everything,
Yeah.
including hunting. And there are some people that are in the television side and the ambassador side of things that
Absolutely.
aren't good people and do terrible things and make us
Yep.
look bad. I'm
They do.
obviously not going to sit here and dive into that, but I'm not going to sit
They're
here and
out
tell
there.
you that everybody they're out there and they're not good for what we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know.
a great conversation point when people who are on the fence, again, you're always going to have that 10% that's anti-hunting. You're always going to have that 10% that's very pro-hunting, that 80% middle. I've always found one of the best conversations you can share with them. You talked about some of the conservation of species. There's a dozen or more animals just from Asia and another dozen or more animals from Africa that literally have more thriving herds in the state of Texas
Yeah,
than in their
absolutely.
native country due to these conservation programs. And when people start realizing that's funded with hunting dollars, when people realize anti-poaching efforts in Africa are funded with hunter dollars, it does give us the opportunity to change the conversation, change the mindset. I want to
And I think
pivot
that's the
here.
key, changing the conservation and changing the mindset. But that doesn't happen overnight. And I think that anybody who sits here and thinks they're going to take a vegan and change their mind overnight,
Yeah.
that's not how it happens. But it does happen by planting seeds.
Yes.
And, planting a seed of thought and letting it marinate and letting it grow in someone is a powerful thing. And
Yeah.
and I think that sometimes we feel like we have to sit there with a loudspeaker and blare it into people's ears. I was at an SCI banquet this last weekend I spoke at, and there were protesters outside. Only in LA. The only
Right.
time that I ever see the protesters is in LA, but there were protesters outside. And their method of protesting was sitting there with a loudspeaker, having terrible signs that said things like "I love hunting accidents,"
Oh
like
my gosh.
wishing us death, right? And that isn't. You're not changing anybody. They're not changing anybody's minds. What like we're and then meanwhile we're in the other room with raising $1 million for conservation.
Right. What are they
And
doing?
and what are they doing out there just yelling, wishing death upon my children? Literally, they say, Nick Hoffman, I hope your children die. True story. That's not how you change hearts and minds. You do it by planting seeds and letting them slowly grow. Very rarely are you going to convert somebody to
Yeah.
anything. Call
Yeah.
it religion, call it anything overnight.
Yeah.
Very rarely are you struck by a lightning bolt because of one conversation.
Yeah. Definitely get people out
You
in the
know,
woods and introduce them slowly. And like Nick said, plant that seed. It's very powerful.
I oftentimes I usually kill at least one doe a year with my bow, whitetail doe, and I have almost the entire thing besides the back straps and the tenderloins ground up into jalapeno cheddar summer sausage.
Mm,
And then I take that and I bring every time I go to somebody's house, I bring them a roll of summer sausage. That's the
perfect.
best way to start a conversation.
Amen.
This is
Love that.
venison? You did this? Wow, this is really good.
Can I do
So, do you
this?
do
How
this a
do I do
lot? Can
this?
I do this? Exactly.
I have a fun question as we kind of wind this down here. Um,
I'm
this is
scared.
one that you didn't know was coming, but requires a little bit of thought, but it's a lot of fun. So, you and I always get to joke since we're both pilots. How do you know when there's a pilot in the room? He'll tell you. I want to put you in the future. You're on a magic carpet ride. Actually, you're in your personal airplane right now,
Yeah.
and you're going into this trip knowing, just hypothetically, that this is the last hunt. This is Nick's last wild ride. You're
Ooh.
retiring from everything, from rabbit hunting to Marco Polo hunting. This is it. This is your last final hunt. This is your definitive Nick Hoffman big game hunt. First question, I'm gonna give you all three questions up front. Knowing that you're retiring after this hunt 100 years from now, and you're flying there in your plane,
Mm-hmm.
where are you flying to? What is the species? What's the rifle? And what album are you playing in your ears as you fly
Ha!
there? So where
Wow,
are you
that's a lot.
flying?
That's
What's
good.
the species? What's the rifle? And what's the album? Nick Hoffman's retirement quintessential hunt.
If I'm flying there, so I'll tell you this: one of my bucket list things that I've never gotten to do, I'm capable of doing, but have never had the time to go do, is I want to fly myself into the bush. You know, the same land a super cub in the bush by myself, solo, park it, hunt a sheep, hunt a caribou, hunt something of consequence that is tough to do, a moose maybe, whatever, and then fly it out myself. So maybe I'm doing that. That would be pretty cool if I'm in my airplane, but this question would have been different. I would have probably answered it differently 5 years ago. Um, the happiest I've ever been hunting is when I'm hunting sheep.
Okay.
Um, Partly because I recognize that it's not something. It's not something you're going to do every day. Maybe the average guy is maybe going to get on one sheep hunt in his life, maybe two. Right. My goal is to chase all four North American sheep, and I'm halfway there. And I've got a stone sheep hunt this summer. Like I can't believe I'm even saying that. So for me, the happiest place that I am in is when I'm hunting sheep and I'm glassing for sheep. I love the hard work. I love all of it. But that being said, in the last 5 or 6 years, I've always loved being on safari.
Yeah.
Safari for me is truly my heart is at peace and happy. I have fallen in love with hunting buffalo with a double rifle.
Yeah.
I mean like so in love with it that I feel like I've got a mistress.
Yeah.
And and I love tracking buffalo with a big old heavy double rifle over my shoulder. I love the feeling of like anybody who's done it, like after about 2 hours, your shoulders are getting tired and you can't find a comfortable place to hold it because it's just this big, huge honking.
Yeah.
It's in the tradition of it and all that stuff. So I'm split between, do I fly myself up and do one more sheep hunt? Or do I fly myself to Africa? If magic carpet ride and I touch myself down in Africa and I hunt buffalo with a double. It's one of those two things. If I'm in the
Okay.
sheep, if I'm in the sheep woods and I've got a rifle, I am now a total convert of the 7 millimeter backcountry from Federal. It's like
Sweet.
I love this cartridge. I'm shooting a 20-inch barrel going over 3,000 feet a second, up to 200 grain bullets, high BC bullets. It's I'm getting just super accurate. I love this cartridge. It makes a lightweight mountain rifle, and I'm in love with it. Okay. Um, the gun I'm shooting right now is a Christensen Ridgeline titanium in 7 backcountry, and it just the thing's a quarter MOA gun out of the box. It's just an unbelievable shooting gun.
Love it.
Half
So we've got
MOA,
your
half
animal,
MOA, yeah. So yep.
we've got your
Or if I'm
gun.
in Africa, I'm shooting a 470 Nitro Express double rifle. You know what I mean?
I do.
So
Love
I'm
those
splitting it.
choices.
Yep.
I'll
What's the
let you
last
do that.
question?
I'll let you split.
Yep.
So we're either flying into the bush. Give me a country that you're flying into for the buffalo hunt.
Ooh.
We're gonna get
It would be the
specific here.
Waterberg Plateau in Namibia.
Okay. And if you're flying into a sheep camp, are you in BC? Are you in Alberta? Are you in where are you?
I think I'm in Alaska hunting all
In
sheep.
Alaska. Well,
Yeah.
we got the guns, but now
hmm
everybody wants to know what's the album playing in your headset on the flight?
Merle Haggard, Big City.
Love it. Great
Yep.
call.
That's for me. That's Haggard has always been my first bird dog's name was Merle. Like for me,
Wow.
Merle has always been my hero. You know,
Fun.
it's either that or Garth Brooks' Rope in the Wind.
Love
Those
that.
two albums for me. Yeah.
Transformational for you. Love it.
Yeah.
I've got one for you. So you hosted our Diamond Founders Launch last year. You've been a big part of Zero Outfitter Fees. You've introduced us to a lot of new friends that are part of the Zero Outfitter Fees family. Why is Zero Outfitter Fees a no-brainer for you as a big game hunter? And why is Zero Outfitter Fees a no-brainer for those that follow you that are serious about, time leverage, financial leverage, and just hunting in general?
Well, you talk about authenticity. So when I first heard about the program, I'm going to be the first person to say that I thought it didn't it was sounded too good to be true. It didn't make sense to me. This I was like when you told me about it, I'm like, dude, you're crazy. That's nuts. That doesn't make any sense, Dan. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like,
I get that a lot.
but I'm sure, and I know that, and I say that to say that the more I learned, and when I started actually talking to people that have had success with the ZOF thing, obviously Diamond Outfitters. I mean, I like you said at the beginning, I'm a fan of what you guys do and have hunted with you guys a bazillion times, and I predate like some Diamond stuff when it comes to
Big
Matt's
time.
stuff and the Borderland Adventure stuff. So I was hunting with Matt before I ever started the television show. So
Yeah.
Matt's in season 1 of
Yep.
Nick's Wild Ride, right? So like Diamond Outfitters sold best in the biz, in my opinion, right? But the ZOF thing made no sense to me. And then the more I knew about it, I'm just like this how that makes total sense. How can you not do that? If you're going to use a tag service anyway, why the hell wouldn't you do that? It's like it pays for itself. You're going to draw in one of those 5 states. To forget the other states that you guys can put, you can put in for all 50 states and be just like any tag service. But this idea that you can literally put your money in and eventually it's like to me I look at it like a hunting savings account. You're putting $1,000 a year into a hunting savings account that eventually is going to pay off in a anywhere from a $10,000 to $40,000 hunt.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to draw one of those tags, especially the elk tags that you guys special in. It's not if, but when, and it's probably within the next 5 years you'll draw one of those tags. And when you do, your hunt's paid for. It makes total sense. I just look at it like a savings account.
Awesome.
That's
Awesome.
how I look at it. It makes total sense. I
Well, I
I don't know
appreciate
how.
that.
Yeah, I don't, and you're still crazy. I don't know. I don't. I think that you're. I think what you do when I can do some simple math in my head, I still think you've got it priced too cheap. I
Thank you.
think for what you offer, it's the best deal in the outdoors you know as far as being able to have the mentorship we talked about, like your
Yeah.
staff and your like the white glove kind of service that you can get to 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 help somebody. Most people are too overwhelmed to even get into the tag thing because what if I draw? What am I going to do? How do I do this? How do
Yeah.
I do that? That's all taken care of. If
Yeah.
you're in the Diamond family and the ZOF family, all those question marks, all those they become boxes that get checked. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And you have help to do it.
Love
Best
it.
best best money you can spend, in my opinion. If you're going to do a tag service, you have no business not doing this. You know. And
Appreciate
I,
that.
by the
Where?
way, and I'm going to be in
Yeah.
full disclosure, I've used other tag services and had big success with them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Before I started doing ZOF, I used another tag service I drew a couple of really big tags through them. They helped me find, hunts, um,
Yep.
for those things. There's other people out there that do, tag services well. You're not a
Yep.
unicorn in that. What you are a unicorn in is what happens when you do draw.
Yes, sir.
And also in the white glove service that you get. Nobody out there is offering that at the level you guys are doing. And I'll I say that with confidence.
Thank you, brother. I
So, you
appreciate
know what I
that.
mean? It's important
Yeah.
to, I'm not sitting here saying you're the only option, but I think you're the best option, like by leaps and leaps and bounds, because nobody else is going to pay for your hunt when you draw.
Yeah.
You know what
Love
I
it.
mean? I
Yes,
love,
sir. Absolutely.
yeah,
Where can
crazy.
everybody follow you? Be totally selfish here. Take advantage of this time. Where can everybody follow you? Buy your music, follow your TV show. Like, give me the full unplugged. Where can we find Nick Hoffman if we want to stalk you?
Well, the first place is, new season, and it comes out in September at Nick's Wild Ride. That's my bread and butter. That's my baby. I'm so proud of the work we've done over the last 10 years. Season 11 debuts on Outdoor Channel in September. If you can't get Outdoor Channel, you can get every episode that we've ever done at Nick's Wild Ride for the last 10 years on myoutdoortv.com, motv.com. You can get a free trial there. If you haven't checked out MOTV, you should be doing that anyway, because it's like $10 a month or whatever, and you get pretty much everything that's ever been on the Outdoor Channel ever,
Yeah.
including all the old Real Tree shows I watched when I was a kid, Roger Raglan and Stan Potts
Jackie Bushman.
and Jackie Bushman and all these guys that,
Love it.
all this stuff that I grew up watching is all there as well. So,
Yeah.
and then new episodes end up there a few months after they air on Outdoor Channel. I'm also, you can find me on FanDuel Sports, which used to be Fox Sports. So a lot
Yeah.
of people have that in their local channels without cable. And then YouTube. So YouTube, Instagram, Facebook is all at Nick's Wild Ride, everything. So we've got full episodes on YouTube as well. A lot of shorts, a lot of different stuff where there's a lot of cool how-to stuff coming up down the pipe over the next few months. Like we're starting to do some tips and tricks, and even though like I said, I'm not an expert. I have learned a few things over the few years that I've been doing this, and people keep asking for tips and tricks, and so we're gonna do a little more of that. So yeah, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all at Nick's Wild Ride, and then Outdoor Channel and My Outdoor TV are the best ways to do it.
All right. At Nick's Wild Ride, go check it out. Follow him on social media. He's got just a ton of new inventory in the can coming up for this next season, and we're building hunts for the next 100 years. So follow him on all the channels. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us in the Speakeasy. First of all, Nick, and the Secret Society of Western Big Game Hunting. Check out the book, What the Mountain Knows, and God bless you and God bless America.
Yeah,
Thanks for
man.
being here, everybody.
The Secret Society of Western Big Game Hunting is brought to you by Zero Outfitter Fees and Diamond Outfitters. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.